Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Danielle. I'll be your host as we discuss Awakening Starseeds Volume 1 and 2. Today we have a very special guest, Michelle Lopez. She's a co-author in Awakening Starseeds of Volume 1 and 2. Hello, Michelle. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really excited to have you here. Can you tell us about yourself so we can get to know you as the co-author in Awakening Starseeds?
Okay, well, I am an elementary school teacher. I am a holistic healer. I focus in my holistic healing practice. I focus on astrology, energy work with crystals, divination, with oracle cards, different modalities, Reiki,
A lot of fun.
Reiki healing. And then I also, I'm a school teacher, so I also do I teach second grade, so I do mindfulness work in the classroom with students. I'm a yoga instructor, so I bring that into my work in the classroom as well.
Oh, that's amazing. I bet the kids love it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So can you tell us about what the word starseed means to you?
Starseed.
Yeah.
Starseed is a multi-layered concept. Basically, what it means to me is there are souls on this planet, and we came here with this plan ahead of time to perhaps awaken sooner than probably the rest of the population. We come with very specific missions in mind. Everybody does. So technically, everybody on the planet is a starseed because we all have a purpose and a mission here. But when starseed, and the way we define it or use it, is just souls who are more closely tied to the cosmos, or like the outer planets, outer atmosphere, as opposed to maybe some souls who feel more closely tied to Earth.
Right.
Okay, so it has to do with experience on a soul level. So we're just souls that came, and we've probably done this work before in other lifetimes, but we came to help with the awakening of the planet. Basically.
I love that. That's so beautifully said. So and within your chapter, can you tell us a little bit, like give us a tiny sneak peek of the upcoming Awakening Starseeds in Volume 2?
Okay. In Volume 2, I decided to write about the healing part of my journey, and the part of my journey that I consider like the more beautiful part of my journey. In the first volume, I talked about the awakening that I had, and right out the gates, I was met with some polarized forces, I suppose, right out the gates. Yeah. And that, that's been a challenge of healing and moving forward on this path. But all it's done is help to strengthen me and to propel me forward. But after I went through several awakening experiences, I started connecting with Mother Earth. And really, because what I see that as being truth. And so I talk about my healing journey and connecting with the goddess and connecting with the mother. And my chapter is called Embraced by the Mother, Sovereignty Rising. And so in that chapter, I talk about how I went through a process of healing. And part of that process of healing was taking pilgrimages to different locations on the planet. So like one pilgrimage was to Mount Shasta, I went to Sedona, the ones that I could realistically do within my, with the resources I had available to me. Arkansas, and there's been other places, but I didn't get into, in the small chapter, I could only get into a few. But through that process of pilgrimage, I was able to heal myself and take a journey of the soul, of really kind of like self-exploration, connecting with the earth and using the earth to heal me.
Wow.
That was all in conjunction with, the classes that I took for Reiki and crystal healing and all that. But the real true healing was connecting with that feminine essence and understanding that the earth is one thing that rings true. It's a universal truth, I believe, that we are of the earth, and that the earth is there to help us align and heal. We just need to align with it.
Yeah.
So
that's beautiful.
Yeah.
I know you might have mentioned this in a prior interview, but can you briefly explain to us about your spiritual awakening? And you did mention you had a few along the way.
Yeah.
What was the initial spiritual awekening that got you open to all this?
Okay, well, I believe a spiritual awakening happens in sort of layers, because we're just like layers of an onion. We're just unlayering, right? We take off one layer, and then lo and behold, there's another layer and another one. And so, when you first start out on the awakening journey, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so awake, and I think I know what this is all about. And then you realize you've only just begun. So so you need to go a little deeper, right? And you take off that layer, and then another one comes up. And so in 2004, or so roughly around there, and there's a window of time like 2003, 2004, and 2005. In that time, I really went through some pretty intense changes and experiences. And it was more of a Kundalini light body activation experience. So where I had, and it started out likely as an abduction experience. So I had this experience where it was like I was being pulled out of my body. So like an astral, like an astral experience. And I believe that, and I don't remember anything after that, like what had happened during that time when I got pulled out, but I suspect that something went on. And when I awoke that night, like all my chakras were awakened, and, I was perceiving things, and it was just very tuned in, like really tuned in. But I had this sort of feverish feeling, like a spiritual fever, and I started just like purging from the body, just lots of it and lots of energy. And this went on for a period of several years and I had to integrate the whole experience of what is this? And, I could feel the light rays coming in through my crown, and lots of activity there that went on for many years. And so I had to come to a period of stability where I found some sort of, refuge, which at that time it was still religion. But I became aware that, that there's this whole other dimension that's real. And I was feeling it on a very physical level. So, but that wasn't the awakening of consciousness in terms of, it was one layer. There was another layer of understanding what the truth of this world is about, right? So understanding that everything that we learn isn't what it seems, and that there's so much beyond that. And so even though I was just going through this rapid release of energy, hadn't come into the full understanding of what the world was about, because I hadn't dived into myself and the self-knowledge and the self-exploration. So the two go hand in hand. What's out there is in here. So then in around 2011 and 2012, like I really started to come back into this awareness, and really kind of like more exploration of the metaphysical part of life and that kind of thing. And in 2012, I was really kind of riding high on those waves of energy that because we walked through several big corridors at that time as a collective. And my life sort of like exploded at that time. And so the awakening was combined with the life circumstances sort of, falling apart. And I look at these as kind of being like these initiatory experiences. So without getting too much, some of the stuff that I went through at this time I could talk about, and I will talk about, but probably in later books. I don't think that the timing is quite right for some of the stuff I would say, but whatever happened in 2012, those experiences led me to a massive awakening and making life changes. So I went through massive divorce, lots of, venturing out on my own. And this is where I started to claim my sovereignty as a person.
I love it.
Yeah, it started with the life stuff, right? So just, claiming my life back, my identity, my persona, like who I am, my soul. So I made the life changes to do so. And during that process, I started to discover more about myself and the nature of who I was as a star seed. And all of that happened simultaneously with the journey of connecting with the Earth Mother, with the goddess, and the cosmos. All of it happens simultaneously. It's a soul journey. So it took
really
that journey of the soul. And I went through a massive process of healing, and I still am, because again, I keep unraveling layers and layers, and it almost seems like I took the crash course in awakening, or I signed up for it rather.
Oh,
in
absolutely.
Life journey, because it's been pretty intense. So so that's kind of how it's gone. And there's been so many interesting experiences that have occurred throughout this process. But the takeaway here is I found myself. I came back to myself. And so that's what it's about. And I continue to discover.
That's beautiful. I'm excited for people to read your chapter. What inspired you to partake in Rada Publications and work with them specifically with Awakening Starseeds?
Yeah, well, I have a friend that was writing collaborative books at the time, and I was thinking, oh, that could be something fun that I could do. I had sort of entertained the thought, but it wasn't anything I had seriously considered. And so my friend, being in that world of collaborative books, she came across this email that Rada and Mike had put out to, make the call out to Starseeds to be part of the book. And so she sent it to me, and I was like, oh, wow, that sounds like exactly right up my alley. But at that time, I wasn't still convinced that I would do it. It wasn't an immediate thing. It really aligned with who I was, but I was like, well, is this really the right thing for me? I had to question it and think about it. And so I did that. I took some time to really consider, like, do I want to come out like this? Like, do I want to bring myself out there? Because I work in a very, I work in the school system, and I work in a very, what we would call, normal sort of.
There's no normal
sort of world. There is no normal. And so because of some of the events I went through back in 2012, which was like a lot of what I felt a little bit persecuted at that time for my belief system. And I was very challenged by the world at that time. I had ended up in psychiatric care in 2012 after the divorce situation. So I was a little bit nervous about doing that. And so, but I consulted with my oracles, my guides, and I got a very clear go ahead. I mean, it was a clearer message than I had received at any time. It's almost like the clouds parted.
I love that.
And it was, I have an oracle deck I used, and I had just gotten this deck. It was the Angels and Ancestors deck. And I had just gotten this deck, and I always bless my decks when I get them, and I dedicate them for the highest good, and to bring about healing. And so I did that right before I went to bed. And when I went to bed, I literally started seeing the cards sort of like unfolding and giving me a message, like specific cards from the deck.
Yeah.
And it was really beautiful. And I was like, okay, I think that kind of is a really like a green light.
Yeah.
That this is a good thing to do. And but I still wasn't 100% convinced, because my rational mind was saying, well, I don't know, that I had to overcome some of that conditioning. And that is lifetimes of conditioning, lifetimes, which I discovered, this has been a theme of. And so I know that the very thing I need to do is to speak. I need to speak more, and I need to speak truth. Yes. And so I thought, well, this could be the platform to do it. And then I got such a warm welcome from Rada and Mike, and instantly sort of like hit it off with them, that it just felt right. Just, we've known each other before, whether we knew it or not. And, it was pure
alignment.
Yes, yes, exactly. So it's like finding the soul tribe.
Oh, I love
And so,
that.
yeah,
What
it
a
was fun.
beautiful experience. I bet it's been just one synchronicity after another, you know.
Yeah,
Can
yeah.
you tell us a little bit about your chapter in Awakening Starseeds of Volume 1?
Um, yes. Okay. That chapter was called Broken Open. And I talk about that time back around 2005 when I went through my massive shift and awakening as far as like a Kundalini light body activation.
Mm-hmm.
And I talk about the challenge of awakening um, and not and questioning my belief system and
Mm,
everything that I was experiencing, and like this whole sort of what is going on here.
right.
You know, what is this about? And I talk a little bit about how I went through my divorce at that time, and but the title of it was called Broken Open because I literally was broken open. I mean,
Mm,
I was just going along just like nothing. Life is good. I'm, you know, doing the best I can as a human and didn't know any different. And then all of a sudden I have this experience and I wake up one morning and I'm like, you know, the
yeah.
chakras are going crazy. So I,
Mm,
it was really challenging because I didn't have any answers at that time. And there wasn't a lot of information out there. And so no teachers around. So I had to really sort of become my own teacher to a certain degree.
mhm.
I find that even now too, even though I've had many people come along my journey to help me, I really do feel like this journey for me is really about coming into my own sovereign power, and nobody can do that but you. And
Right.
so, but that was the challenging time. That was working through all the stuff. But what it taught me was to find an inner strength uh, and an ability to overcome challenges,
Mm-hmm.
and to keep pressing forward and
Right.
to not stop. And so no matter what's thrown at us, because I had a lot thrown at me at the time and people were questioning my sanity. And
Wow.
I knew there was a reason for it.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, what I now to know to be some polarized or oppositional forces were working against me at that time.
Mm,
Uh, but
see.
being in this unawareness, you know, I stepped into a level of awareness, but I was still in some unawareness. I didn't know what those were,
Mm,
but I do now.
okay.
And that's something that in the future, I'm still in the sort of processing stages
Mm.
and trying to gain understanding. Um, Perhaps someday I'll speak about, but
Oh, I'd love to hear about it.
yeah.
Yeah. And
So,
I love your strength and courage, you know, because I think a lot of people can relate to what you're saying
mhm,
on their own, right? You know, because we do go through challenges and then it's
yeah,
how you know, overcome them. And it's okay to have bad days and then you
yeah,
just realize how strong you are. We're so complex. I mean, it's like you're
we
completely
are.
accurate when you said the onion. I'm like, yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I study astrology. So
Okay.
I use astrology in my
Ooh, I
divination
love it.
practice. And so I have Neptune square moon.
Okay.
Okay. A square
I don't
between
know what that
Neptune and
means.
moon. Yeah. And basically it's like, yeah, this Neptune is the planet of illusion and
Oh,
moon is about security and what
okay.
nourishes us. So for me with that square aspect, that's a hard aspect. That's
Oh my
about
gosh.
really like learning the like shedding off the illusions
Yeah.
or the deception filters that we put over our eyes.
Wow. Yeah.
And you know, perhaps I was a little bit naive. And
Mm.
sometimes I feel like a Pollyanna, like come along with my little wide-eyed sort of, you know,
Yeah.
innocence, but really it's like, no,
Mm.
toughen up, girl. It's like the universe is saying, toughen up.
Oh.
And I have. So now I feel like it's been a tremendous gift for me,
Hmm.
because I can see deeper to my experience and understand with clarity
Yes.
that, you
Yeah.
know, that it's so different than what we believe things to be. Life is.
Right.
you know, and it's a hard journey to take. It's not the easiest journey to go through that removing
Mm-hmm.
of the veils of illusion.
I agree.
But the takeaway is that the real story is so much more beautiful than the illusion or the deception that
Mm-hmm.
has been put over us. It's so much more, you know, and so that's where we're moving as a world. And we've
Mm-hmm.
already had some of those layers ripped off collectively, but the journey is actually an individual journey. And so
Mm-hmm.
we each have to take that journey. And
Yeah.
so that's what my stories have been about, is that coming into that sort of self-empowerment. So before we start projecting out into the world and saying, oh, that needs to change, that person needs to change, this is wrong, we need to look at ourselves
Right, right.
and do it within ourselves, because when we start doing that within ourselves, then the world around us changes.
Yep.
We actually give people permission to be authentic, and we help, you know, everything just changes. So
I agree.
yeah.
How supported during this creative process did you feel with Rada Publications? And what was the whole experience like for you personally?
Yeah, I've always felt very supported by Rada Publications, by by Mike and Rada. I could, you know, message them anytime, you know, email. I felt the communication was always very good. You know, they offered opportunities for us to you know, share our platforms or whatever we have going on, projects, through these interviews, through you know, press releases that they do. Let's see what else. Conferences. We went to the Dimensions of Disclosure conference
Ooh,
and had an opportunity to go to that, which was a lot of fun. So, and just a camaraderie and a friendships formed. I've met many people through this platform, so
mm-hmm.
it's been a really positive experience. It's been, for me, it's been about connecting with a community of like-minded people
Yes.
and people to share experiences with.
Yeah.
We all have different experiences, but we all
Mm-hmm.
have a common ground, right?
Right. Yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah,
Um,
so it's been great.
did when you went to Disclosure, is that what you said? What
Yeah. Uh-huh.
did you meet there was another author. She went to the Disclosure, I believe. Did you end up meeting her?
I met
Tina?
Stasia Bliss. I met Lynn Pacificar.
Okay.
Um, yeah.
It could have been a different one. That's really cool though.
Yeah.
So did can you share with us a well, it doesn't have to be one, it could be a few, of your life lessons that you've learned? I mean, I know you're kind of have mentioned quite a
There's a
few,
lot. Mm-hmm.
um, but as far as how it's made you the person you are, what are a few
Mm-hmm. There
lessons
are some
you learned?
takeaways here, though. Some themes that have emerged that are bigger than, and one of the biggest life lessons that I have learned is to take personal responsibility
Mm,
for myself, and so it's a responsibility and ownership.
yeah.
So that's been a big life lesson for me. Not that I wasn't doing that before, because I've always, you know, I've lived according to some expectations, you know, societal expectations. But when I say take responsibility and ownership, what I'm saying is on a really more personal, on a soul level. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
it's like if you want to manifest, people talk about manifesting, but you only manifest from where your level of consciousness is. So um, you have to be willing to shut off the layers of untruths within yourself in order to manifest what you want, because otherwise you're going to get mirrored back to you things you don't want, right?
Right.
And so that's part of the journey, and that's part of the lesson. So taking ownership and responsibility for the healing work, the inner work that has to be done, is a big one. You know, I'm really one of the things I talk about in this current chapter is soul contract revocations. And
Mm,
so part of my healing journey, and one of the most impactful things that I have done on my journey is soul contract revocations. And so I've been in a daily practice of those, almost daily, for the past probably the past year or two. And before that, a little less so, because I discovered these back in 2016. And they have been super impactful in my life. And I know one of my missions here is to release some ancestral karmas. And so these have been some of the most impactful things of releasing karma, is the creating sacred containers and doing these revocations. So if there's people struggling out there and they feel like, nothing has worked, because I've tried many modalities of healing, and I'm not saying they haven't all contributed to part of my sovereignty work, but until we claim what it is that we want in a sacred manner, we don't see much change. Because the law of attraction, and part of it's like, okay, manifestation, you have to do the inner work before you're going to manifest that thing that you want, and it's not about what you want, it's about what the soul needs to align with. So we're not talking about the outer, we're talking about the inner.
Yeah.
So I hope that makes sense, but that's really impactful, important work that I've done.
That's
awesome. It all comes back to responsibility.
I love that.
What are you ready to take on? We all want the mystical experience or whatever, but are you willing to do the work and the grounded work? Because it's not about escapism or sometimes what we make it out to be. It's really about doing the daily work.
That's so beautiful. What an example. Thank you for being here and showing up in the world the way you do, because this sets such a great example. I mean, with the children you're working with too, I mean, they're seeing you, and on a subconscious level, I believe they can pick up on your energy. So that's so beautiful. Excuse me. So I do have a question about how would you share with our listeners, people who were interested in working with a lot of publications? Would you encourage them to reach out and work with them? How would you?
Yeah, absolutely. You have to look at your life and see, what are your goals, right? What do you want to accomplish? And, if it's to if it's part of your healing journey, then I say go for it. And most of us are here because it's part of our journey work. Because it's when we speak, we get a healing. And I know, like, for me personally, one of the healing, I didn't do this because I wanted to promote a platform. I did this because I wanted a chance to speak and to exercise my voice. And when I do that, I know that my ancestors, that the impact that I have, that just sort of ripples out in the unseen is the most powerful thing. And so for me, it's been about a healing. So maybe other people relate to that, where, they have a story to share, they need to speak about something. This is a great platform to do that. It's a safe container to do it. And I think a lot of blessings will come from it if people decide to do this.
Well, thank you.
So to me, it's more than just platform, but it's about healing your voice and expressing and connections. So
that's beautiful. I love that. Well, where can we find you? I would like to put your information down below so they can click on your link. Do you have a website?
Yeah. Can I talk a little bit about my my work with the kids?
Oh yeah. Well, actually, that was my next question. Is what do you want next? Yeah. I apologize.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No worries. I can be reached at michellekearneylopez.com. Okay. And I also would like to encourage people to go to my YouTube called Animal Magic. And so right now we're currently working on a project called Animal Magic. And this is a children's book, and it brings out, it teaches the kids about yoga and mindfulness.
Oh, that's so nice.
So it's the animals come in as teachers to the children, and the children have some kind of a social emotional lesson that they need to learn. But really it's about coming into authenticity. And so when we come into our authenticity as an individual, then we lead to this collective unity. And so that's kind of the main undertone of the story. And it's, you know, there's like cute yoga poses and that kind of thing. And there's like, you know, a yoga fairy and fun little elements to the story. But the main takeaway is coming into individual empowerment and authenticity so that we can collectively grow as a world. So, so anyway, so yeah, that's that.
I love that, the empowerment behind what you're doing. And it's so great that you're doing it with kids, because that's a good time to start it when they're young, you know, so that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for everything that you do. And like I said, I'll make sure we drop your information down below for those who want to reach out. And of course, we'll link Rada Publishing here too, in case you want to share your voice as well. And thank you so much, Michelle, for your time. I really appreciate your beautiful energy that you're bringing to this world and all the work you're putting into that and taking responsibility as a sovereign being. I appreciate you very much.
Great. Thank you.
Have a good...
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.